first of all, understand this. Before the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Narushkin, the head of the SVR, his press service put out a report that said that the Russians were aware of, I think, 7 to 9 facilities being built by Latvia on behalf of Ukraine to facilitate drone launches. They said, we know where these are, and if you do this, we can hit them. And so, I mean, Vova and Alexis are good friends of mine. I love these guys. And they do, I always joke to them that I think they're working for the SVR because the things they do is better than any intelligence service. They're able to get deep insights into the true thinking of the West, which is shown to be duplicitous, liars, can't be trusted. But the idea that you need Vova and Alexis to tell you that Latvia is behaving poorly. The Russians knew this. When the drone struck St. Petersburg, Russia tracked it the whole time. They knew they were going out to the Gulf of Finland, coming in. None of this took Russia by surprise. Now, I've been a proponent for some time now about striking Europe. You know this. I've said it on your program. Shoot the dog. Hell, I gave a speech at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum where I said, shoot the dog, got a standing ovation, except from everybody except the Russian diplomats who went, nah, we're not going to do that. But I thought that Vladimir Putin was going to come to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and say, I'm shooting the dog. Because why not? Narushkin said they'd got it. Then, they've got these sites, and then we saw those sites being used to send drones to attack St. Petersburg. So I thought for sure Putin would do that. He shocked me. The entire speech that he gave at St. Petersburg made no reference to the Ukrainian conflict at all. And this opened up an insight. Remember I told you the key about being a good analyst is to be able to sit back and take in new data and say, because the only voice that matters in Russia is Vladimir Putin's voice. That's the only voice that matters. Now, I mean, he listens to other voices, but the decisions are made by him, not by Peskov, not by Lavrov, not by Gerasimov, by Putin. And so I'm listening to Putin saying, where's he going? I'm expecting fire and brimstone. I'm expecting him to say, as I speak, give me the button. Boom, there goes Latvia, Estonia. And I would have cheered because I thought it was the right thing to do. That's because I was ignorant. Because I was listening to too much Russian TV. I was listening to too many Russian pundits. I was listening to too much Russian social media. I thought that was the pulse of Russia. The pulse of Russia comes from the pulse of the president. The president said, this war will not define us. What defines us is economic stability and economic growth, that the future of Russia is its economy. And he sat there and he made a pitch for investments. It was a good pitch because $84 billion worth of investments were garnered from the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. But his focus was, we are moving forward. Now, then he turned around and questioned and answered and talked about the special military operation. But it was stunning because he basically turned to the military and gave a Stalin-esque type order to the admirals, to the generals, to the marshals. Boom, go forward, do your duty, da-da-da-da-da. Standard stuff. Then he finished in a way that only a president who was totally in tune with the Russian soldiers could have finished. Работаем, брат. Keep working, brothers. That comes from the Dagestani police officer who was executed live by terrorists. They said, do you have anything to say? He said, Работаем, брат. Keep working, brothers. And that's become the rallying cry of Russians everywhere in the streets as they come together. Работаем, брат. The two soldiers say, Работаем, брат. That's it. Keep working, brothers. Russia's more united than I've ever seen before, and they're not going to let this war dictate the priorities of Russia. And why is this important? Yes, I'm not an international lawyer, but I know enough about international law to know that I can make a cosmical claim under Article 51, self-defense, citing the Carolina Clause for preemptive self-defense, so that Russia could take out the Baltic states right now as we speak, legally. Hell, they don't even have to make that case for Germany because Germany is an enemy state under the United Nations Charter, and Germany's rearming in a way that replicates patterns of behavior linked to prohibited behavior, and Russia could take them out anytime they want to, legally. Russia is right to point out that all of these nations are parties to the conflict, and therefore Russia has a legal right to strike. But again, let me get back to what I said at the beginning. Nothing NATO is doing is moving the needle on the battlefield. Nothing they're doing. So now you're Russia, you're Vladimir Putin, whose number one job is to keep Russia on track towards stability and economic growth, because that is the future of Russia. Forget all the people that sit there and say, oh, Russia wants global instability in the energy markets because they make money off of higher energy costs, right? The price of oil goes up. and Russia makes money. You don't understand that Russia, I think the total percentage of GDP from oil sales is 20%. Um, Russia makes money off of economic growth across the spectrum of Russia, including energy, but other ways as well. And a lot of that growth is dependent upon investments. And people aren't going to invest when you have high energy prices. You can't, because the high energy prices create inflationary pressures that are detrimental to investment climate. No one will invest in Russia with high energy prices. No one will invest in Russia. And that's the exact opposite track that Putin is trying to take Russia. So Putin's not looking for instability to exploit global. Putin's looking for long-term predictability in the global investment environment. That's what he's looking for. And when you're winning the war against NATO across the board, why would you decide to change the algorithm that's producing victory? Because again, propaganda doesn't win wars unless you allow it to rot it from in. That's mental warfare. Andrei Levitsky has talked about it. People should study what he writes. But if the goal is to get Russia to doubt itself to the point where they have a Moscow Maidan moment in Putin's, then that's a goal in vain, because it's not going to happen. Putin is not going to attack NATO unless NATO does something precipitous. Right now, NATO's not in a position to do anything precipitous. There's a lot of attention paid on Germany. And why not? You have to respond. In the information warfare game, when Germany publishes a white paper projecting the potential of warfare in 2029, when Pistorius talks about expanding military from 148,000 to nearly 500,000, you have to respond. You have to say this is bad. But the reality is, Russia doesn't have to do anything. You know that Olaf Scholz asked for 100 billion euro back in 2022 to magically refurbish the German military, which was basically destroyed. Destroyed by Ursula von der Leyen, I believe, who was at one time affiliated with the Ministry of Defense. That 100 billion went in and nothing happened, because Germany's so fundamentally broken that 100 billion euro couldn't even begin the process of rebuilding. Now they're talking about tripling the size of their military with what manpower? 60% of the German men of military age say, we're not going to fight. You want to have a draft? The quickest way to get Merz voted out of office is to instill a draft. Will never happen. Merz has no political viability. He's finished. He's done. There's no future. The future of Germany will be dictated by Alternative for Deutschland, which will be a part of a coalition and eventually maybe even dominating coalition down the road. And they're not going to continue this path. Everything Germany's doing is a joke. Their technologies don't work. Their industries don't work. This is the reality. Why would Putin attack Germany today? You attack Germany, you run the risk of altering the algorithm that is guaranteeing your success. Let NATO score political points in social media. Who cares what Ukrainian bots say in X? Who cares what the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, New York Times says? Who cares what anybody says? The only reality is the reality on the ground. And on the ground, the Russian army is advancing, slaughtering the Ukrainians in numbers. This crap about 35,000 dead Russians a month, it's just stupid. The Russians are suffering casualties. Of course they are. This is war. It's a new kind of war. It's drone warfare. But the idea that the Ukraine, we can document 25 to 35,000 Russian casualties a month. No, they can't. It's a straight up lie, part of the information warfare that's going on. The Russians, on the other hand, can document that they are slaughtering the Ukrainians in similar numbers. And one of the things you have to learn about Ukrainian numbers, they tend to project their own casualties onto Russia. That's been something they have historically done. And so what we have to know is that the Ukrainians are suffering 25 to 35,000 casualties a month. And they're TCC guys who go around, bump people on the head and kidnap them. They can't kidnap 25,000, 35,000 a month. There's a manpower deficit in Ukraine right now, and it's of strategic proportions. This is the fact. So there is no pressure on Vladimir Putin to attack NATO. There's nothing coming from the Ministry of Defense. There are people on the periphery who are saying things. Karaganov is famous for, promoting things like this. But Vladimir Putin spoke at St. Petersburg. Why don't people listen to him? Why don't you trust the Russian president when he speaks about Russia? And he basically said, we're not going to let this war define where we're going. He's not panicked. There's no panic. There's no panic among the Russian people. And any panic you see in the Russian media sphere is entertainment driven, controversy designed to garner views, clicks, etc. The only voice that matters is Vladimir Putin. So far, Vladimir Putin has been consistently calm and in control. There's no panic.
I know you have to run now. I just had a very brief question. How long do you think this war can continue now? Like how long can they hold on? Because we see things deteriorating a bit, as you said, on the front line. There's a lot of front lines where the Russians are now just punching through. How long do you think the Ukrainians will be able to hold on here? Remember, there's a lot of variables at play, so I know one should be careful to make predictions. But
look, I mean, these are unknowns. The problem is, when does the structure collapse? You place a structure under tremendous pressure, and the structure starts to weaken. But structures are designed to reinforce each other and reinforce and stay in. When will the structure collapse? The structure will collapse when it's incapable of sustaining the load. Ukraine continues to receive considerable infusion of capital from the West, which means as Russia takes down load-bearing mechanisms, they're reinforced or new mechanisms brought in, changing the thing. Logic dictates that Ukraine can't hold out much longer, but I've been saying this for years, and Ukraine has held out because what we don't know is what the West is doing. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes in terms of the infusion of capital, et cetera, that are unknowns. The key thing here that people have to understand is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Russia will do this forever. Again, listen to the Russian leadership. They cited the war with Sweden. I forget how long it took to defeat Sweden, 30 years. It's not going to take Russia 30 years. But the idea that Russia is sitting there saying, we got to win by this calendar date, they've never done that. Russia has never put a calendar date up there. It's all based upon operational objectives. And Russia has done some things that people need to understand. The Anchorage compromises are over. You heard Vladimir Putin. Sumy is a Russian city. You understand what that means, don't you? Sumy is Russian. Kharkov is a Russian city. You do know what that means, don't you? And Odessa is a Russian city. This war doesn't end in a way that's going to be good for Ukraine. Ukraine will be destroyed by this. Denazification is a reality. And denazification means the literal liquidation of everybody. Vladimir Putin has said, we are collecting names. Your names are on the list. We will hold you to account. Take him at his word. This is why there will not be a Zelensky government post-conflict. Zelensky will be dead or in jail or run away. Syrskyi is gone. Zaluzhny, history. Budanov. All of these players are dead men walking. They have no future. Anybody affiliated with the Nazi regime, the Banderist regime, is gone. There will be no rump state in West Ukraine. Lvov, sort of a bastion of Banderist ideology. Every single Banderist in Ukraine will be eradicated. That's how this war ends. You say, how long will it take? It doesn't matter. It will take as long as needed. Vladimir Putin is looking for long-term stability. That means that this war cannot end in a way that allows it to be rekindled 5-10 years down the road. When this war is over, a red line is drawn. That means it will never happen again. And that's the foundation of stability Putin needs to be doing the growth going forward. People need to put that in their thick skulls. Vladimir Putin cares about everybody in Russia, but the idea that he's going to dramatically change the trajectories on because two people in Feodosia are stuck on a hill without gasoline is the dumbest thing I ever heard in my entire life.